How I kept custody of the little boy I'd raised as my own son from the father who'd walked out on him, and only came back for the money in the 20 minutes I stood in a hospital hallway and refused to move. I want you to picture where I was standing when it happened. A hospital emergency room, the fluorescent kind of bright that makes everyone look sick, at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. My nephew Eli, my boy, in every way that has ever mattered, was somewhere behind those double doors with a broken arm and a gash over his eye from coming off his bike. And I was standing in the hallway with his little blue backpack still on my shoulder because I'd grabbed it on the way out the door without thinking, the way you grab anything when a neighbor calls to say your child is hurt. And a man I hadn't seen in almost 8 years was standing in front of me, blocking my way to those doors, telling a nurse that I was not to be allowed back there. His name is Trevor. He is Eli's biological father. And he pointed at me, in that hallway, in front of the nurse and 2 strangers in the waiting room, and he said, "She's not the mother. She's not even the parent, she's just the aunt. I'm his father, I'm his blood. She has no say over my son. Get her out of here. Just the aunt." I want you to sit with those 3 words for a second, because they were meant to erase me. Just the aunt. As if I hadn't held that boy through every fever for 2 years. As if I didn't know he can't fall asleep without the hall light on, that he's allergic to penicillin, that he cries at the part in the movie where the dog finds its way home. As if I were a bystander. As if the man who said the words hadn't missed 8 birthdays and never sent a dime. And I did not scream. I did not lunge for the doors. I did not start shouting about everything I'd done, though every cell in my body wanted to, because my child was hurt and a stranger was standing between us. I have learned that a frightened woman shouting in a hospital hallway becomes, very quickly, the hysterical one, and gets walked out by security, and I could not afford to be walked out. Eli needed me on the other side of those doors. So, I took a breath. And I looked at the nurse, not at Trevor, at the nurse, because she was the one who actually mattered in that moment. And I set Eli's backpack down, and I opened my own bag, and I took out a folded blue-covered document that I had carried, in one bag or another, every single day for 2 years. And I said, calmly, "Ma'am, I understand there's confusion. My name is Denise Carver. This is a certified court order. I am Eli's legal guardian, appointed by the family court. I have full authority over his medical care. This gentleman has no custodial rights. Please check it against your records, and then please take me to my son." The hallway went very quiet. Because what Trevor didn't know, what he had gambled everything on not being true, because it was inconvenient, and because he'd never once thought of me as a person who would be ready, was that I was ready. That my sister, before she died, had made absolutely certain that a day like this could come and I would not be standing in a hallway with nothing but my love and my word. My love was real. But my love was also, that night, on file with the county, signed by a judge. But to understand why I had that paper in my bag, and why my hands weren't shaking when I unfolded it, you have to go back. You have to understand how a boy becomes your son when you didn't give birth to him, and what my sister knew, at the end of her life, about the man in that hallway. My name is Denise Carver. I was 49 years old the night Eli's father tried to have me thrown out of the emergency room, and for most of my life I believed something that turned out not to be true. I believed that love was self-evident, that if you truly loved a child, and raised him, and showed up every single day, then that love would be obvious to everyone who mattered, that no one could look at the 2 of us and fail to see who his mother really was. It took me until I was 49, standing under those terrible fluorescent lights, to understand that love is not self-evident to people who don't want to see it. To some people, love is just a word, and the only thing they respect is a piece of paper, so thank God I had the paper. Eli is my younger sister's son. My sister's name was Shelley, and she was the light of our family, funny, warm, a little chaotic, the kind of person who made every room better. She had Eli young, with Trevor, and for a couple of years they were a little family, and then Trevor left. I won't rehearse all of it, because it's Shelley's story more than mine, but the short version is that he decided fatherhood wasn't for him when Eli was about 2, and he disappeared. No support, no birthday cards. A couple of years in, Shelley gave up trying to chase him, and just built a life for the 2 of them, and she did a beautiful job of it, on not much money, the way our own mother had done for us. I was always close. I never married, never had children of my own. It just wasn't the road my life took, and so I poured myself into being the aunt. Eli and I were bonded from the start. I babysat, I did the school pickups when Shelley worked doubles, I was at every recital. I want to be honest, though, because I made mistakes too. For years, I told myself I was just helping. I told myself Shelley was the parent and I was the backup. I loved that boy like my own, but I kept it in a smaller box than it deserved, because I didn't want to overstep, and because I never imagined I'd be anything other than the aunt who came for Sunday dinner. Then Shelley got sick. Ovarian cancer, found late, the way it so often is. She fought for almost 2 years. And in those 2 years, everything changed, and I stopped being just helping. I moved in. I became the one who got Eli to school and helped with homework and made dinner and sat with my sister through chemo and held the bucket and learned the names of drugs I'd never heard of. Eli was 8 when she got sick, 10 when she died. And in those 2 years, that boy and I became something the word aunt doesn't begin to cover. Here is the part that matters most, the part that became the whole story. About 6 months before Shelley died, on one of her better days, she sat me down at her kitchen table, and she was very serious, and she said, "Denise, we need to make this legal, all of it. I need you to be his guardian, on paper, before I go." And I said what people always say. I said, "Don't talk like that, you're going to beat this. Let's not." And my sister took my hand, and she said the thing I have thought about every single day since. She said, "Denise, loving him isn't enough. If something happens to me, Trevor could come back, or his mother could. And if you don't have this in writing, they can take him from you, and no judge will care how much you love him if you don't have the paper. Promise me you'll get the paper." So we did. While she was still well enough, we went to an attorney together, a kind, sharp woman named Naomi Frost, and Shelley made her wishes formal, a will naming me as Eli's guardian, and the beginning of a standby guardianship. And after Shelley passed, I did the hard, grief-soaked, unglamorous work of finishing it. I petitioned the family court. Trevor was located and legally served with notice of the proceeding. The court requires that they have to try to notify a living parent. And Trevor, true to 8 years of form, did not respond. He didn't show up. He didn't contest it. He didn't so much as make a phone call. And so the court, having given him every chance, granted me full legal guardianship of Eli. It was one of the hardest and most important days of my life, sitting in that courtroom, grieving my sister and becoming my nephew's mother in the eyes of the law on the very same afternoon. I kept the certified order in my bag. Naomi told me to. She said, "Denise, keep a certified copy with you, not in a drawer at home. With you. Schools, hospitals, emergencies, the day you need it, you'll need it in your hand, not in a filing cabinet across town." I thought she was being overly cautious. She was not. She was the smartest person I knew. Now let me tell you why Trevor came back, because it's the ugly heart of it, and you deserve to understand it. Shelley had a small life insurance policy, and when she died, because Eli was a minor, certain benefits were set aside for him, survivor benefits, held in trust, that a custodial parent or guardian would oversee until he came of age. It was not a fortune, but it was enough. And somewhere in the 8 years Trevor had been gone, he'd apparently kept just enough of an ear to the ground to hear that his son now had a small sum of money attached to him. He didn't come back for Eli. In 2 years since Shelley died, he had never once called to check on his grieving child. He came back the moment there was money, and he timed it, I would later learn, to try to establish himself as the father in charge, which, if he could control Eli, could have meant controlling that money. And the night Eli fell off his bike and I called the ambulance, the hospital, following its own protocol, had tried to reach any listed parent, and somehow I still don't know exactly how. Whether the grandmother tipped him or he'd been watching Trevor found out, and he came, with his mother Brenda in tow, and he decided that a terrified 9 o'clock emergency room was the perfect place to plant his flag. He thought I'd be too frightened and too overwhelmed to fight. He thought grief and panic would make me small. So let me take you back to that hallway, to the moment after I handed the nurse the order, because that calm was not a lack of feeling. My heart was breaking with fear for Eli. But underneath the fear was something Trevor had never once had to reckon with, because he'd never bothered to know me. Underneath the fear was my sister's voice, At that kitchen table. Get the paper. I had the paper, and a man's confidence, no matter how loud, does not outrank a judge's signature. The nurse, her name was Grace, and I will be grateful to her for the rest of my life, took the order, and she read it. And she did the thing that good people in uniforms do when the truth is right in front of them. She followed it. She looked up at Trevor, and she said, professionally but firmly, "Sir, I'm sorry, but this is a certified guardianship order. Miss Carver is Eli's legal guardian and medical decision-maker. Unless you have a court order that supersedes this, I have to follow it. I'm going to take Miss Carver back to her son now. You can wait here." Trevor did what men like Trevor do when the ground gives way. He got loud. He said he was the father, that blood was blood, that no piece of paper made me the parent. And I let him say it, because Grace was standing right there, and because his own mother, Brenda, was watching. And because every word he shouted about blood made the truth of who he was clearer to everyone in that hallway. A real father would have been running toward those doors to get to his hurt son. This man was standing in front of them, arguing about rights, because the child behind them had become, to him, a claim. And I said one thing, quietly, before I went through those doors. I didn't say it to hurt him. I said it because it was true, and because I needed to say it once, out loud, in front of witnesses. I said, "Trevor, you had 8 years to have a say. You had 2 years, while your son cried himself to sleep missing his mother, to pick up a phone. You didn't come when he needed a father. You came when he came with money. I am his guardian, by his mother's wish and by law. And right now, my son needs me." And I walked through the doors. Eli was scared and in pain and so relieved to see me that he cried, and I held his good hand while they set his arm, and I did not think about Trevor again until Eli was stitched and splinted and finally, groggily, asleep. Now, the consequences, and here's where I want to be careful, because this channel is not about revenge, and neither am I. Trevor did try, after that night, to make something of it. He got a lawyer of his own and filed to challenge my guardianship and seek custody. And for a few weeks, I was terrified all over again, because that's what a threat like that does to you. But I called Naomi, and I did what my sister had taught me to do. I did not panic, I got organized. We had everything. We had the will in Shelley's own hand. We had the guardianship order, properly granted, with the documented proof that Trevor had been legally served 2 years earlier and had ignored it. We had 8 years of his absence, no support payments, no contact, nothing which a court very much does notice. And when it came out, through the proceedings, that Trevor had recently inquired about Eli's survivor benefits before he'd ever inquired about Eli, the judge saw exactly what was happening. Trevor's petition went nowhere. He undid himself, the way people like him do, by revealing that the child was never the point. The court left my guardianship exactly where it was. I didn't crush him beyond that. I didn't need to, and Eli didn't need a war. Trevor drifted back out of the picture within a few months, once it was clear there was no money and no easy control to be had. I take no joy in that. For Eli's sake, every boy deserves a father who wants him, but I've made my peace with the truth that a father who only appears when there's something to gain is not a loss. Not everyone stayed on the wrong side of it, either, because the aftermath is never as clean as we'd like. Brenda, Trevor's mother, Eli's paternal grandmother, surprised me. A few weeks after all of it, she called, and she was crying, and she said, "I let my son use me to get to that boy, and I'm ashamed. But I do love my grandson, and I've missed him, and I had a decision to make. And I decided that Eli could not have too many people who genuinely loved him, as long as they were safe, so Brenda and I built something careful and real. She sees Eli now, in healthy, boundaried ways, and she has never once tried to overstep again, because she knows the truth of who his mother is now, and she respects it. Some relationships can be built where you least expect them, if the person is honest about the damage. Brenda was. Eli is 12 now. His arm healed crooked perfect, the way kids' bones do. He still needs the hall light on. He calls me Aunt Denise in front of his friends and Mom when he's tired or scared or half asleep, and both of those are true, and I've stopped needing them to be the same word. Our home is small and settled and entirely ours. In the mornings I make him the terrible cinnamon toast he loves, and we argue about whether he brushed his teeth. And it is the most ordinary, most extraordinary life, and it is mine, and it is his. and I've found I don't mind the paperwork it took to keep it at all. Here is what I know now, and it's the only thing I really came here to tell you. Love is not self-evident. For most of my life I believed that if you loved a child enough, and showed up enough, the world would simply recognize you as theirs. But the world does not run on what's obvious. It runs on what's proven. And there are people who will look at a decade of your devotion and wave it away with 3 words, just the ant, because to them, love is only as real as the document behind it. My sister understood that before I did. She spent one of her precious dying days making me sit at a kitchen table and promise to get the paper, not because she doubted my love, but because she knew love needs armor in a world full of people who respect only leverage. And here's the other thing, the one I most want you to carry, especially if you're raising a child who didn't come from you, a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, a foster child. A child of the heart. Do the unglamorous, uncomfortable, expensive, tedious work of making it legal. Get the guardianship, sign the forms, keep the certified copy in your bag, not your drawer. It feels like bureaucracy, it feels cold next to the warmth of what you actually feel, but it is not cold. It is the coldest, hardest, most loving armor there is, and the day someone tries to take your child, it is the thing that lets your love win instead of just lose beautifully. Love is the reason. But the paper is the shield. Trevor thought I'd be standing in that hallway with nothing but my feelings. He forgot or never knew that my sister loved that boy enough to make sure his aunt would never be caught empty-handed. That paper wasn't bureaucracy. It was Shelley, reaching forward from the end of her life to protect her son one more time. It was the last thing she ever gave me, and it was everything. So let me leave you with a question, because I read every single comment, and I want to know. If someone stood between you and a child you'd raised as your own, and told a room full of strangers you had no say, would you have stayed calm and reached for the paper the way I did? Or would you have fought with everything in you, right there in that hallway? There's no wrong answer. I've made my peace with mine, but I'd truly like to hear yours. Tell me in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you, if you know what it is to love a child the world keeps calling not really yours, then stay with me. Because the next story I'm going to tell you is about a woman who cooked Thanksgiving dinner for her whole family for 30 years, and then, at that very table, read aloud the group chat she was never supposed to see. What was on her own family's phones went silent the moment she started reading. Watch that one next. Subscribe to Aveline Justice. New stories every single day. And every one of them, like this one, is for anyone who was ever told that the love they give doesn't count, by people who never once looked closely enough to see it. Because the truth, it always finds its way to the surface. I'm Denise, thank you for sitting with me. I'll see you in the next one.